The following is a paid program by the Whitley Law Firm. Welcome to Attorneys on Call, the program that gives you free legal information from the Whitley Law Firm. Now, here's your host, Drew Smith.
And welcome. So glad you're here today. Thanks for joining us for Attorneys on Call. We've got a very special show for you today. We are spotlighting a national nonprofit, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. In studio with us, of course, Ben Whitley from the Whitley Law Firm. And Ben, let's talk to our viewers a little bit about why we are spotlighting Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Jennifer here, the Executive Director for North Carolina. And why is this so important to you?
Sure. Drew, we handle a lot of car wreck cases, and what we consistently see every day is in some of these terrible injury cases that we're dealing with drunk drivers on the other side. Mm-hmm. And in our world, in the civil law world, there are tools that we have that we can try to do, which is called punitive damages, mm-hmm. meaning that they're punishment damages that mm-hmm. are available to victims of drunk driving accidents if they've been hurt and it's been caused by a drunk driver. Sometimes we're able to get punishment damages, but that is still not enough, right?
Sure.
Because we're still seeing this happen, and it's still a prevalent issue, and I don't think it should be, because all of these resources that are out there now for folks, like the Ubers, the Lyft, all of the awareness that has been out there before, this should not be an issue that we're continuing to see these types of numbers on. So what the Whitley Law Firm wanted to do is do more of this education. And so we want to talk more about this because it needs to be back in the conversations because this can't keep happening.
When you talk about rideshare programs, Uber, Lyft, all of that, there's no excuse for getting behind the wheel when you're inebriated.
There's not. And those resources are available not just in the cities, So, but I think and what I want to do today, we're going to have someone that was impacted by a drunk driver, a victim, and just to have some awareness so that this conversation can be talked about again. And so I hope that we can think about ways to support MADD and the things that they've done. They've done amazing things in help change our laws to make them stronger, but there's still more work that can be done with our DUI laws. And I think some of their legislative outreach is some of the most important work they do, but that's me talking, and we do have the executive director here. So
Jennifer Lichtneger is the executive director for North Carolina's MADD, or Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Mm-hmm. Jennifer, welcome. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
This is going to be a great discussion. Tell us a little bit about what Mothers Against Drunk Driver, what you do actually. Are you more of a policy organization, or how do you work, so to speak, with like personal injury lawyers like Ben?
Absolutely. Well, we do. When it comes to impaired driving, we really do it all, and it's kind of a big umbrella. But our main goal, if you look at it in a certain way, would be to just end impaired driving.
Okay,
so we do that in a variety of different ways. That's through advocacy, which Ben had mentioned. We also do a lot of preventative. So we go out to kids and schools and teens and to talk about underage drinking on a prevention level. We also work with law enforcement and within the court system in order for high visibility law enforcement, because we know that works through checkpoint saturation patrols and things like that.
Okay.
And that our goal is ultimately to be no more victims of impaired driving. And until we get there, another big part of our mission is really providing support and resources to victims who've been impacted and their families by impaired driving.
So Ben had mentioned earlier that we're actually seeing an uptick in the number of cases that are going on. I would think the opposite would be true, mm-hmm. because it would seem that people are more in tune with the education around drunk driving and the implications it has. But are you seeing an uptick? Are more people getting behind the wheel drunk?
And unfortunately, the numbers that we're looking at is really looking at, pandemic numbers, when we're kind of looking at that as well. So it's 2020 and 2021. And in North Carolina, along with a lot of other risky driving behaviors, impaired driving did increase. So pre-pandemic in 2019, we're looking at in 2020 and 2021 about close to a 20% increase in impaired driving.
Wow.
So
that's a lot.
Yeah, it really is. And in 2021, which is the last time that we have statistical numbers, we lost 429 people to drunk drivers. So that's, too many.
What can people that are watching the program today, what do you want them to really know? What can they do to help Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and how can just an average Joe or an average citizen help?
Well, a lot of the things that we, the things that we say is to share the message, to make a plan. We are, an organization that if you're 21 years old and you're going to be drinking and it's legal, that is okay. What you need to do is make a plan and to never get behind the wheel impaired and to share that message with your friends, coworkers, families that it's not okay to do.
Okay, so have a support group.
Yes, and there's absolutely no excuse. As Ben had mentioned, there's, with everything that's available to us today, with rideshare programs, with the knowledge that you have that it's not okay. But what the result is for drinking and driving, we see fatalities every single day. We see, people who have, awful injuries, that are, traumatic injuries that take years and years if they ever recuperate from. So really, making sure that people are doing the right thing to tell everybody that they know not to get behind the wheel. A lot of the things that we're even saying now is, don't even, if you're going out to a place where alcohol is being served, don't even bring your car there. Because, take your ride share or get dropped off where you're going, because if your car's not there, you can't make the decision to drive home.
Okay. Let me ask you this. How do you define impaired driving? Because we're not talking just about alcohol, are we?
No, we're not. And that's another thing that we are unfortunately seeing a large increase in with the legalization of marijuana across the country. Impairment is, it's drugs, it's prescription drugs often. We see a lot of poly-use where there's a combination of, different drugs. So, our whole thing is that, any type of impairment, if you feel different, you drive different. So. Interesting.
Ben, when you look at the cases that Jennifer is talking about, increasing, people that are watching the program today that may have been in this type of situation but are not really quite sure what to do, what's their first step?
Well, or in the situation of being a victim, obviously that they need to research and talk to a lawyer, whether it's us, there's other good law firms out there that will do free consultations. But just know that a drinking and driving case is different, and for those, there's always the consequences out there as a potential detriment to someone making that decision. They think, well, if they're making that decision, they think they could be arrested. They could have these consequences, but the criminal consequences. But I think it's important to know that there are other consequences out there beyond just the criminal consequences. Because if someone were to hire our firm and they had been hurt by a drunk driver, our goal is to go after that drunk driver and even look at their own individual assets beyond their insurance.
Hold them accountable.
Yeah, we don't often see that. That's why you have insurance. But I just think that's something that's really not discussed as far as part of the negative consequences to having making that decision, that it's a financial, beyond all the expenses they would have to pay for their criminal issues. So beyond the guilty conscience they would have to pay for causing what they've done.
So
there are personal consequences that could happen, that could linger for a lifetime for that individual. So
they've got a 401k plan with $2 million in it.
Well, they wouldn't be able to go after that.
You couldn't go after that.
No, but we're going to go after everything that we legally can, because the law allows us to in a DUI situation.
In a DUI case,
the law says you guys can go for more. Okay. We're going to give you more to go after, because the legislator hoped. And there is there's a deterrence of that, but nobody really knows about it. They know about all the other consequences, but they don't know about that consequence. We will let them know about that consequence if somebody has hired us to go after them. But it's just all part of that making a plan, because you don't want to end up in these situations where you're on the other side of our firm or somebody else's firm, because that's not where you want to be.
Jennifer, we've got a special guest coming, a victim of drunk driving. Can you tell us a little bit about the guest who's going to be joining us?
Yes. So Brittany Cass is her name, and she was injured by an impaired driver on January 4th of 2022. So just over a year ago. Suffered traumatic injury, and it's just amazing, her story, and having her here today. So she's a true warrior.
Well, welcome, Brittany. And when we come back, you're watching Attorneys on Call. Stay right there. We're going to have a lot more to come right after this. Welcome back to Attorneys on Call. We have a very special guest in studio with us, Brittany Cass, who lives in New Bern, a victim of an impaired driver. And Brittany, it's so glad that you're doing well. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Of course, Jennifer Lichtneger from Mothers Against Drunk Driving, who's the executive director. Brittany, just let's go back to the beginning. What happened?
Sure. I was traveling home from a church meeting on Highway 70 in eastern North Carolina, in Newport, and was struck head-on by a drunk driver. Thankfully, I was by myself in the car. I was taken by ambulance to Carteret Hospital and then immediately life-flighted to Vidant for life-saving abdominal surgery. I broke both my femurs. I shattered my right knee, my left hip, my tailbone, my L3, and have since been on the road to recovery.
Did the doctors say they were amazed you survived?
Yes, absolutely. I am a miracle, and I like to consider myself a survivor rather than a victim. So.
Okay. I'm sure that you didn't have a brain injury, though.
No, thankfully.
Thankfully for that. Mm-hmm. But really, really banged up. How long did you spend in the hospital?
Total about a month, and then I was sent home to start home health and to start going to therapy. But they came to my home because I couldn't drive, I couldn't walk. I was wheelchair bound for 4 months and had to progress from a wheelchair to a walker and then walker to crutches. And then I've been on crutches for about 6 months, and I just progressed to walking with nothing. It's great.
And for those of us that hopefully will never have to imagine what you went through, I wonder what that was like. You're driving home, you're thinking, okay, I'm coming home now from church, and your life just changes in a flash.
Yeah. Thankfully, I don't remember anything.
That's
I remember being at the meeting, and then I remember I was in a coma for 6 days. And I have 3 young children, a 5, 7, and 9-year-old. So explaining to them what drinking and driving is and what had happened to their mom, and not knowing when I would wake up or what the situation was really challenging for my husband. So,
and your husband's in the military?
Yes, we're currently stationed at Cherry Point. He's a C-130 pilot.
Okay. So, what was that like for him to have to experience that too? But here's a person who's in the military and is probably somewhat accustomed to things that could go sideways or could go bad like that. But when your wife and your loved one, it happens like that, it must have been I can't believe how traumatic it must have been.
Yeah. We were actually on the phone. He was on Bluetooth in my car when it happened. So he heard the entire thing.
He heard it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, he heard it. And so we've since connected with the EMT that saved my life and those firefighters that were there the night of my accident, and kind of gotten the story through their eyes. It's a pretty traumatic experience. It was 3 cars involved, or 4 cars total, including the impaired driver. So it was a really big accident. Lots of paramedics and EMTs and police officers, and so we have since gone back and thanked them, and my husband and the EMT have met, and it was quite the emotional experience for him.
But that's part of your healing process,
absolutely,
I guess,
absolutely.
Right?
So, but I've just, it's a part of the journey is going back and thanking those that have helped me, and then reaching out to MAD for resources to help me to meet other people that have gone through what I've gone through or similar situations, and how to go forward.
Jennifer, what does Mothers Against Drunk Driving do for people that are survivors like Brittany?
So, oftentimes it's just, we provide services free of charge, but, often really it just starts with that emotional support.
Okay.
Being able to provide, people who've been impacted, with the connection to others, that they're not alone.
Okay, sure.
That, it's an unfortunate group, that you're part of, but also, it shows that, people have gone through this before, that you can survive and thrive afterwards. And then it's very much about providing them that platform to be able to share their story, to tell others, about this, what they've been through, so that they can prevent it from happening, to somebody else. So, that's kind of, and of course, other resources and things that we would provide, whether it be court accompaniment, just being there, to be in court with people, helping them navigate the justice system, both civil and criminal as well. But there's a lot of things that we do to try to hold up people who've been impacted and their families.
I'm curious to know how you decided on survivor and not victim. I'm sure that's very strategic and maybe part of your healing process.
Absolutely. Before this accident, I was very active. I ran 40 miles a week. It was a goal to hit 1,000 miles a year, and it was very attainable. And so this has definitely changed the trajectory of my life, physically, emotionally, mentally, and then coping with getting my life back. And the only person that can do it is me. And I'm very motivated and very driven to get there. And when doctors say, I'm not sure I'll be able to walk again until after that 18-month mark, I'm like, watch me. I'll
told you that?
You. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I broke both my femurs. This knee went shattered.
I watched you walk into the studio.
When your right knee goes through the dashboard because you're slamming on your brakes so hard, I've reconstructed. So I've had a total of 7 surgeries and spent more time in the hospital, initially the month, and then more surgeries and more recovery, rigorous physical therapy. I'm still doing therapy on the clinic, and then now I go to pool therapy twice a week, and so that's really helped. Now I'm just building up my endurance and working on my gait pattern and driving. And
to give a little bit of insight on, her perseverance and the type of fighter that she is. The first time that I met her in person, she had reached out, and we had an event in Charlotte, a Walk Like Mad event, and we were talking via email, and she was telling me, what had happened to her in the crash and the extent of her injuries. And she said, and this event was in June. She wrote me in May. Her crash was in January, and she said, I plan on walking for the event. And I said, and I read it, and I read her, what happened to her, and I said, wait, she's talking about January a year earlier. And then I said, asked her, and she's like, no. So she came on crutches, and sure enough, walked that lap around the pond there, and so
with
that was
kids,
good.
And my husband.
And her husband.
What has this experience been like for your children?
Lots of emotions. We've gone up and down. My 7-year-old has really struggled with being upset and angry. But we're very open, and we talk about it. We have a Christ in our lives, and we rely on our faith. But this last February and Valentine's Day, he actually came and was like, Mom, I think I'm doing okay. I think we need to love him and forgive him. And that really spoke to my heart. His example to me to you want to know what we do need to. We're getting our life back. We're getting our normal back, and just to learn from my 7-year-old that we can forgive and not hold that grudge. And even though life looks very different than we originally thought or planned, you don't plan or pick this. It doesn't happen to certain people. I never thought it would happen to me, and it did.
If there are people watching this show right now that may have gone through something similar to what you've gone through recently, what's your piece of advice to people?
Keep going. Push through the pain, ask for help, get help that you need, whether it's physically or emotionally. Get a good support group that loves you and will be there for you, because there's no way I could be where I'm at today without it. Being in the military, we have friends all over, and people have come in and helped us take care of our kids, helped me with therapy and driving me, and get that support system and just have faith that things will get better.
Great advice. Thanks for sharing your story today.
Thank you.
Thanks for
having
being
me
here. We're going to be back with more Attorneys on Call right after this. Welcome back to Attorneys on Call. I hope you enjoyed that last segment. A very, very powerful personal story from Brittany Cass. And Ben, hearing her tell that story, how a drunk driver smashed into her car, nearly killed her, spent months in the hospital, going through what she's going through, devastating.
Devastating. And she reminds me a lot of our clients that have to go through those same stories, and they're resilient, and I don't know what that's like, having to be resilient against a situation where somebody, it's not that they made a bad decision that caused that. They made a criminal decision that caused that. And I don't know what that's like, being on the other side of that. I appreciated hearing some of that. But what surprises me is the resilience despite that. And you have to, you have to.
Jennifer, what are some of the services that Mothers Against Drunk Driving will help with people like Brittany?
Absolutely. Well, MAD has a 24-hour hotline that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, that at any time a person who's been impacted can call our hotline at any time and get somebody on the other line who can help them, provide them some support, and also refer them to wherever they are in the country. So, and then, locally we have trained advocates that work every single day with victims who've been impacted, and that could be through just emotional support, court accompaniment, helping them navigate the justice system, which in North Carolina we know can be quite confusing and not always easy to kind of figure out your way through, particularly if you've been traumatized,
right.
or a family member has been. So you want to kind of focus on that.
Right, and I know that like a lot of those, when they have to come back for the court hearings, a lot of times they'll get continued, and it's this process that can be drug out for someone that's a victim and having to kind of just relive it. So I imagine that's
absolutely.
a tough thing, because that court system, sometimes things can be continued for even a year.
Yes, and oftentimes even now what we're seeing even longer, where we are right now. So certainly it's something that we will kind of help them go through, everything from helping write victim impact statements, things like that are important, and also more importantly connecting them to other people who have been in the same situation. Yeah. So that's also very helpful in that healing process as well.
Right.
So, Ben, the people that are watching right now might have gone through something like this, maybe, hopefully not as severe as what Brittany went through. But if they were injured by someone that was impaired, a drunk driver, what should they do? What's the first thing they do?
Well, some people may think that and be deciding that they don't want to pursue it if they were just hit by a drunk driver, and let's say that was very minor injuries. They may have even just gone to the emergency room to get checked out. And they were let go, and they were sore for a week, or even they go to chiropractor, or whatever it is. They have a very minor injury that doesn't last long. And they may not think they'll go through remember there's two court systems that are in play here. The criminal court system and the civil court system. Okay. And in the criminal court system, the state is the prosecutor, and the state prosecutes the claim. And in that situation, the state doesn't have the resources to prosecute every claim the way that they should. So sometimes they're having to take pleas, and sometimes they're having to do things. And that's just a resource issue. And there can be penalties for the drunk driver in the criminal setting, but there's some victim help in that setting with the victim impact statements. And there is a victim compensation funds, but they're very minor. Okay. But in the civil, the second part of the law is the civil side of the law. And that's what I'm a civil attorney. And someone would hire me to pursue a claim for money damages. And I mentioned this person that got hurt by a drunk driver. They didn't think it was that big of a case that would need an attorney. And I would just say, in an effort to continue to put pressure on drunk drivers, I would encourage folks to bring those cases, because the punitive damages aspect, that punishment aspect of it, makes it worthwhile to do that. And what that does downstream is that pushes the insurance companies to do a better job at evaluating their drivers that they're going to insure, and add more money to their policies if they are a risky driver or uninsurable. Okay. And getting these folks off the road, and it's just more, I guess it's just more consequences that we as the public can do to continue to put pressure on that. While organizations are out there that are doing other things with the laws and the outreach, private citizens, if you're impacted by this, there are things you can do to push back.
Absolutely. We're in our final minute, but Jennifer, I want to give you the last word on what people should know about MAD, how they contact you, and what you can do for them.
Absolutely. Well, we're here. You can go to our website, which is mad.org. We also have a local MAD North Carolina website as well. And there they can find information on everything that we do, from victim services to advocacy to teaching kids about prevention to court monitoring and a lot of other things. So if we always have room for volunteers. We rely on them as part of our grassroots organization.
And you train those volunteers?
Absolutely. Yep. We train those volunteers. And so, if anybody is interested, please go to our website and, come join us.
This has been a wonderful conversation. Yeah. Jennifer, thank you so much for being here. Ben, great to see you as always. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Attorneys on Call. We'll see you next time right here Have a great day.